the leader as a coach or a manager, micromanaging or empowering, emphasizing self-care. Our guest today, Heidi Werther, executive coach and consultant, is here to tell us all about it. Heidi, good morning and welcome to the HR and Leadership Spotlight Show.
Good morning, Chuck. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, excellent. I'm glad to have you on board. So many things to talk about. You've been in HR for so many years, and now you've transitioned. You're an executive coach and consultant, and I want to hear all about your journey. But before we get started, we have a tradition here on the show. Let's see. Did you bring anything for us today?
I have a beautiful coffee mug, my favorite Monet.
Yeah, tell me about it. Why is that special to you?
You know, I think I grew up around artists. My grandmother was an artist. My mom painted. I have a brother who's very talented with photography, a sister who's an interior designer, and the list goes on and on. I didn't get that talent. But when I was a freshman in college at Indiana University, where I did not graduate from, but I spent 2.5 years, and it was a great experience. I took an art history class, and my favorite part of it was Impressionism, and Monet became, and then that summer I had the opportunity to go to France with a friend of mine, and I went to see all of the wonderful art, and I fell in love with Monet and Degas. But this mug has been special. I got it when my kids were very young, and for some reason it has not broken, and I get to continue to use it.
That's fantastic. That is a great story because, when you connect the dots, like, you've studied something, but then when you actually go and experience it like you did in France, it really brings it all together, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, for sure.
And I think you're doing that now. And I want to know about your journey, and I have the notes here that I wrote down when we were talking, and I've talked to you before, and we've known each other for a little bit here as we've been talking about our various businesses, but you are an executive coach and consultant. But you haven't always been that. Maybe you've been that way. You've been kind of a consultant to many people, but you're an HR person, a VP of HR. So tell me about your journey. Tell me how you got to where you are today.
So it's a great question, Chuck, and it's a very circuitous path. I did not take the linear route. HR kind of, I have an interesting background in HR, but I didn't start there. So I was in sales, I was in marketing, I was literally thrown into my first, and I'm putting air quotes here because it's a management job, which now I understand I was actually leading, but I was also managing, and I had to learn the difference. I see manager as someone who tells and demands. And, if you look at the definition of a manager, it's someone who's in charge, who runs. And a leader is really someone who looks to guide and grow and develop their people and empower them and let them learn and take risks and create that safe space. And when I reflect on that first job when I was 23 years old, I was a marketing contributor. I was an individual contributor. And all of a sudden, 1 year out of college at a Fortune 500, I was asked to not only lead the marketing efforts, so take over marketing, but also lead an inside sales team of 6 individuals and no training. And I learned a lot. And I think what really comes back to me about that job is that I finally learned that it's good to ask for help. I hired a consultant to teach my team how to sell, and I got to learn alongside with them. And I had to do that because even though I had an innate ability to sell, I needed to let my team or build trust among my team. And by hiring a consultant, they saw me learning alongside with them. And then I was able to take the learning from the consultant and my own learning in the sales process and develop my own training for new hires that I was onboarding over time. And it was a great experience. It's something I love reflecting on. And my journey And I think also I'm a natural mentor. I studied, I have a master's in mediation, and I'm a professional coach. And I got there way later in my career. I didn't, as I said, my authentic, my real passion. So you asked about passion. My real passion is to help others, or maybe one might say be in service of others. And I've done that throughout my entire life, starting with mediating conflict in my family and helping friends when they were in need. And then, just that natural ability to help people as I was leading teams, not tell them what to do, but really pull out of them their strengths and how they could leverage their strengths. And that's something I do as a coach. So I ended up, I had HR roles kind of throughout. So I was selling into HR, and then I ended up running the business end of a nonprofit for 8 years. And part of my function was HR, because I had administration. So it was finance and HR, it was marketing, it was some development work, et cetera. And that was my first foray into actually being an HR person, but I wasn't an HR person by title. And then again, kind of went back into sales again, selling into the HR space. And then I was working for a small company where, again, HR was one of my many hats. And then I went and said, I'm done with selling, because I ended up back in the sales role. And I wanted to get back to who I am authentically, and that's a helper. And so I went and got certified as an executive, as a professional and executive coach. And I also got my master's in mediation. I started my own practice. I was doing some consulting I was doing some HR consulting, I was doing some marketing consulting, as well as coaching and mediating. And one of my clients, their head of HR left, and she needed someone to step in to help out until they hired a replacement. She asked if I could help a few days a week, and I agreed to do that. Within a week, I was offered a full-time position as VP of HR, and I declined because I loved the practice I was building, I had built, I guess, at that point in time. And 6 months later, they hadn't replaced the VP of HR, and I had fallen in love with the organization, the work I was doing, the people, and I ended up staying there. And I stayed there for 4 years and left at the end of 2019 to go back and rebuild my executive coaching and consulting practice. Awesome. Lo and behold, the pandemic hit. So I will admit it wasn't the easiest time to launch a practice, but I was fortunate because I have built relationships over the course of my career and life. And I think we all know, or many of us at least that are in business for ourselves, relationships are key. Our network is a key to building our own business. And so I was fortunate. I won't say it's been an easy ride over the last year, and I've had many ebbs and flows, but I feel confident the flows will continue to get stronger over time as I continue to build my network. And it was funny because yesterday I was speaking with 2 different people, one who I used to do a lot of partnering with in an old sales position that I had. He was an executive at a Fortune 500, and he recently retired and started his own consultancy. And he said, I'm getting my business through these guys that I worked with for 40 years because they know and trust me. And then I was speaking with another consultant who I'm actually trying to introduce to a nonprofit I work with to do some strategic planning work. And he said the same thing. His business comes from his network, from people who know and trust him. And that's really, I think, what helps people build their career, whether it's you're building your own consultancy or you're getting your next job. Listen, I've coached people in career transition, and most of them get their next job from their network. So, there's so much to be said, and I know I've gone. I'm answering all I'm going off on a tangent, but it all kind of leads into one another. And I feel that my background, my circuitous route, allowed people to see me in different capabilities. They were able to see my strengths. I attribute my first promotion when I was 23 years old to take on that huge position to somebody recognizing my strengths. And again, that's a sign of a good leader, right? And I think that's what a leader is somebody who recognizes the capacity in someone and is there to kind of help move them along and
Sure.
really empower them to dig deep and do their best work.
Well, I want to dig deep, a little deeper in there, but I'm, fascinated with the masters in mediation.
Okay.
And tell me about mediation and who are you mediating for? I didn't
So,
even know that existed as a master's degree. Tell me
yeah,
about mediation.
there aren't that many programs left. In fact, the program that I did at Champlain College has either folded or is folding, sadly. It was a wonderful program. Many mediators. So there's mediators who are lawyers. I don't have a law degree. And then there are people like myself that are mediators. Many people do not get a master's in mediation. There's a lot of 40-hour mediation trainings, which I've also done in addition to getting my master's. But I just really wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree. And I was doing it simultaneously with when I was learning to be a coach. And there's a lot of the same skill set used. Active listening. I'm all about communication, as you know, Chuck, in the workplace. Like 60 to 80% of the problems stem from poor communication between employees. And so one of the things that I really took away from my mediation program was the importance of helping people to communicate. It's not only important in business, it's important in personal relationships, et cetera. And so many people are afraid, for example, to have those difficult conversations. But why I went for that program is I really wanted to have that deep education. I wanted to learn the theory and have the experiential practice, which that program gave me both. When I decided to become a mediator, so I'm a child of divorce and I also am divorced. And when my ex-husband and I got divorced, and we're, by the way, really good friends, we talk regularly, we help each other out. It's really healthy. And it was hard. It was hard. I won't say it wasn't. But I wanted my kids to grow up in a healthy family, even if my ex-husband and I were not together, because I didn't grow up that way. My parents' divorce was really contentious. And so when I first became a mediator, my goal was to be a divorce mediator, which I did many divorce mediations. I don't do that work anymore. When I went to be a VP of HR, a lot of the work I was doing internally was coaching employees and executives. And I was also mediating conflict between manager and employee, employee relations issues. It's mediation. It's a really important tool for anyone in HR to have.
Absolutely.
So when I left there and relaunched my practice, I focused on executive coaching leaders at all levels from emerging through the C-suite, but I call that executive coaching. And mediation, and my mediation is typically when companies are having issues with their employees, they can bring me in and I can help them if they want an external neutral party, because even in HR, you're supposed to be neutral. And I remember the COO who I reported into at my last company would always say, Heidi's Switzerland. She couldn't believe how neutral I was able to be as an HR person, right? And I think it's sometimes easier and needed to bring in an external mediator in certain situations. So I'll do that in businesses. I also will help business owners, which I've done. I was doing that when I had my practice before taking that VP role, and I do it again. Is I'll help business owners that are partners have those challenging conversations and mediate issues. If someone's thinking about starting a business with a partner, that's a really good time to work with a mediator. And I like to get involved in those conversations. And if a partnership is dissolving and they need a mediator to work with, that's another way I'll do mediation. But my original reason for doing it was divorce. And it was a great experience, but I don't want to do that work anymore.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. When you bring up mediator, I immediately go to the personal side, or maybe I think about the employee and maybe a manager, or all of a sudden I think of unions.
Yes.
That's fascinating to think. mediation between business partners.
That's right.
That's a great service. Or you're going to start a business with someone, and I know sometimes it can be awkward because it's like, you take this, you do this, you do this, but then to bring in a mediator to mediate that formation of that business process, that business partnership, I love that aspect.
Yeah, and it really helps to have somebody like me in the room to help, because a lot of times people are afraid to say what they really want. And so if they can have that neutral party to really help each party hear one another and pull out the important pieces that need to be on the table so that they start off really healthy and really clear on how their roles are going to look in the organization. It's I think people, honestly, when they're getting married, it's a great thing for them to do is just kind of figure out what's it going to look like. Let's envision it together. Again, I'm not doing that work, but in any kind of partnership, I think it's really healthy.
Yeah. It's all about the alignment and the expectations. And I talk about that when I talk about engagement.
Yes.
And engagement, not only personally, like you mentioned in maybe newlyweds or marriage, but in that business, the
Right.
employee to have engagement to the company, to have that
That's right.
alignment. And I love that service that you're providing.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Micromanaging versus empowering,
Mm.
leader, coach rather than manager. And if you started off talking about that the manager is kind of defined as this and a leader is defined as this. Can you just delve into that a little bit more for our listeners?
Sure. So again, I think I said I consider a manager, and this is really, I mean, listen, I think the word manager, it's a title, right? Just because you have the title manager does not make you a leader. A man, and I don't mind manager as a title. I think it's an appropriate title. It's what it connotes to me is I think about manager being in charge and being the teller, being, I really like the word and term leader and what leader stands for. Leader stands for, I think about a leader is someone who is no longer focused on them, but they're focused on helping the people who they're surrounded by, whether it's their team, their people in their organization, their direct reports, however you want to put it. They're helping those people to grow and develop. They're empowering them to have an opinion, to take a risk, to innovate, to be creative. When I think of the term manage, and it's more of the, let's call it command and control, which sadly, Chuck, still exists in many organizations. And a lot of people don't see it. I help my clients gain self-awareness and release those blind spots when they are actually doing more telling than empowering. So, and anyone can be a leader. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. I've witnessed amazing individual contributors lead well and beautifully in organizations. They bring in an idea, they share their opinion, they listen to others' opinions, they have that dialogue, they innovate, they collaborate. I see people leading from the front, from the side, from behind. It's not just top down. It's not just because you have a title. And yet I do feel that if you are a manager of people, that to be a leader is much more impactful. And so when I'm working with clients who have the skill set, but maybe don't engage with it as often as they can, because, and I can say this as a parent, my kids are older now, they're grown, but when they were younger, sometimes it was easier to just do it for them than to help them figure it out. Right. That wasn't helping them, Chuck. That was actually blowing their self-esteem and self-confidence. When I stepped back and allowed them to do it and take the time to do it and figure it out, that's what helped them grow their self-confidence and their self-esteem. And they grew from that. And it's the same thing when you're managing people. If you're leading by challenging them and empowering them and believing them and trusting them, you're going to get so much more. And you mentioned employee engagement. If you want an engaged employee, leading is the way to engage them. Telling is not the way to engage them. So,
okay, good.
yeah.
Good. No, I love that conversation about manager, and I like how you position manager is more about me, and that doesn't mean that's bad, but me trying to make sure I'm managing things, but leading is more about you and
That's
helping
right.
you get to where you want to go, but that helps me also. So that's cool. What a neat positioning of that.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
I part of the work that I do, Chuck, is uh, not only in my one-on-one coaching, but I love to do custom workshops to help managers learn to be what I call leader as coach or coach leader, giving them the tools to trust that their reports have the capability to help them learn to tap into their strength, their direct reports strengths, leverage those strengths to empower them to do so much more, to build the trust, to learn how to be active listeners, to really have those engaging conversations, to learn how to have difficult conversations, because that's part of it too. Feedback is critical, and we hear so often that feedback is not a standard part of the conversation. And it's great to have an annual performance review, but if the information comes as a surprise because the conversations haven't been happening all year long, it's not going to be as impactful or as effective.
Yeah, I like that. I bet your workshops take great managers and they find their blind spot. They could be great leaders. They don't realize it because they don't,
Right.
and yet they're exhibiting those traits. But once they harness that and become aware of that, that's probably where you take them, right?
That's right. Self-awareness is a lot of the work that I do. Most of my engagements, well, all of my engagements include some sort of an assessment. Sometimes it's a self-assessment. Often it's a 360 review to really release those blind spots. And then we use that to, like, where are the gaps? What needs to be worked on? And we focus obviously on the positive, but it's an opportunity for them to see, okay, where do I have an opportunity for development? Professional development is the work that I'm doing with my clients. Sure. Yeah.
Now you mentioned
Yes.
self-awareness, but I know you're big into some other type of self called self-care.
Yes.
So tell me about the self-care, and specifically you had mentioned to me early on off camera about HR self-care.
Yeah. So Chuck, I think if there's so much that has come out of the pandemic, right? And I know because I've worked in HR and because of who I am, I'm a natural helper. I have been my entire life. I've always, I don't want to say always because I've gotten better, but traditionally I've put everyone else's needs before my own because that's what helpers do. And ultimately it catches up to you, right? And we can't be our best selves for others if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I think what I've seen so much during this pandemic and what I've tried to highlight for my clients or contacts in HR, because I often am hired through HR to work with their leaders or their teams, is that it's really important for the HR folks to be taking care of themselves so they can be their best selves for their employees and for their organizations. And I know, I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was working as VP of HR, I probably could have used a coach. I was getting coaches. I was coaching a lot of people in the organization, but I was also bringing in external coaches for our employees, for our leaders, for people at all different levels. I never asked for a coach for myself. And I reflect on that and say, wow, there are times that having a coach by my side would have been really, really helpful. Right. That's just one example. That's not the only self-care. It's eating well. It's getting enough sleep. It's, taking the time you need to be with your family. Right now, the pandemic really called that out. Is people continue to be so challenged, especially working from home, if that's new for them, and their kid is being homeschooled. How are they balancing that? And so everyone needs self-care. those parents, I'm giving them gold stars. I'm also giving HR people gold stars because they took on so much responsibility during the pandemic, from pivoting the workforce to working from home, to keeping up with changes in rules and regulations and compliance issues, to thinking about how are we going to return to work, what is hybrid going to look like if that's the approach, et cetera, what's realistic, what policies need to be changed for flexible work schedules. There's just so much on their plate. But so whether you're that person who's just started working from home or learn how to start working from home and taking care of your kids, how do you manage time for yourself so that you can be the best for yourself, your company, your kids, your family, or these HR people who are just smothered? I was actually talking to a chief HR officer of a very, very large company on Tuesday this week. And she was telling me that for months, she was getting 3 hours a night of sleep because she had so much work on her plate. And I said, what are you doing for self-care now? Like, burn out. We've heard a lot about burnout this year. We've heard a lot about the increase in mental health challenges this year. If you're not practicing self-care, those things are going to come up. And then what? You're of no use. So yeah, I'm really trying to get HR people to focus on self-care, whether, again, it's through making sure they get sleep, making sure they're eating well, or getting a coach to be there to help be a thought partner.
Yeah.
They've got so much they're trying to figure out still. So
I love that. And a lot of people don't realize that. I got probably a couple of months ago, I dabbled into getting a coach just for a couple of months, see where that went. And it was fascinating, the things they can unlock. And a good friend of mine just got, and he himself is a coach, but he got someone, I think this person builds themselves as the clarity coach, getting your, so you can clear up, you can figure out what's going on. And he said to me yesterday, he said, Chuck, he says, I've been working on this book and I've been doing this, and this clarity, I think it was a clarity coach, he called himself, has said, no, do this, focus on this. He goes, it was like, whoa. And I love the concept of, the HR folks are in the weeds, and who takes care of the old thought of who cleans the dentist's teeth, who cuts the barber's hair, who takes care of the HR person. And you bring that to light. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's
So
really important.
We are getting down on our time, but is there anything, there's so much that you do. I know that you're empowering leaders, you're coaching, you're consulting. Is there anything I missed? And if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
So, Chuck, we could talk all day long. So, what did you miss? If people want to know about me, I have a website, HeidiWerther.com. They can find my contact information there, or they can reach me at Heidi@HeidiWerther.com. Obviously, I have a phone number. It's on my website, but they can read about my different services and how I work with people. And I think what's really important is no two situations are the same. My work is customized. It's not, I can't pull something off the shelf and deliver, even when I do, say, an active listening workshop, I might use pieces from old workshops, but I always try to tailor it to the organization's current situation. When I do team coaching, we usually try to use real life situations to, work out. And my team coaching can be a half day or full day retreat, or it can be a 6-month engagement where I'm working with the team over and over. So everything is really customized. What my goal is to understand the need from the client, and then talk about different ways I can help them. And then together we figure out the best way to bring me on to help them in the most effective, efficient way. And sometimes it's what can they afford, right? And especially right now, I work with, I love being brought in by organizations, because then I can make an impact, because I'm brought in more and more and more to work with different leaders, sometimes teams, sometimes workshops. So I can make a bigger impact. But I do have individuals who seek me out on their own because they want to do their own professional development, which is totally fine. And I work with large organizations, but I also work with small to mid-sized organizations. Sometimes the CEO or the founder of a small company brings me in, and that's really fun because I'm truly their partner because they have nobody else to turn to. Similar to an HR person, like who do they go to if they need to talk about things?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot that I do, and I'm happy if someone's interested, someone that's listening is interested in learning more. I'm happy to have the conversation. That's how I build the relationships and gain the trust and do the work that I do and love to do. And one thing I do want to share is that I grew up hearing work doesn't feel like work if you love what you do. And I can say what I do right now, even through this pandemic, and even though I'm doing business building, which is not the easy or fun part of my work, I love what I do each and every day. And that makes an impact on my clients.
Awesome. Yeah, and folks, I'll have that information in the show notes below. So Heidi Werther, master of mediation. Sounds like a magician. Master of mediation, but business mediation, proponent of self-care, HR self-care, proponent of leadership, empowerment, coach, consultant. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chuck, and I really enjoyed it.
Awesome.